Obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it. Michael Jordan. Wise words to kick off your Wednesday. As you go through the day, remember challenges aren't roadblocks, they're opportunities. Don't let them steer you off course. Face them head on and keep moving towards your goals. This is Jamaica Magazine, and I'm Jabertha Atkinson, your guide for today's program.
The sun is no joke, especially in the middle of the day. So, what do you do to protect yourself?
Slap on some sunscreen that's SPF 30 or higher. Sunscreen should be broad spectrum and water resistant, especially for beach or pool days, and reapplied every 2 hours. And while you're at it, slip on a shirt to protect your skin. Light, breathable fabrics are best.
Lastly, seek shade between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. because this is when the sun's UV rays are strongest. Skin safety is your safety. Cover up today and try your best to keep cool. Oh, I know I've already said it, but please remember, not because we're black means we don't need sunscreen. All skin types do.
Good day, I'm Lisa Rowe and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, August 13, 2025. The Ministry of Education is ramping up school infrastructure upgrades with critical repairs planned for 202 institutions this year. This is supported by a $178 million increase in its maintenance budget, with a revised total of $628 million. Permanent Secretary Dr Andrew Holness made the announcement during a JIS think tank yesterday. She says the additional funds have facilitated the start of many smaller projects during the summer break.
Many of our small projects have started, and I want to commit that all our projects will be ready and completed by the start of the new academic year. I've got the assurance of my technical director, and we are assured that the resources will be paid out on time. And so, school principals, you have been aware already of what we are committing.
$300 million has also been set aside for school furniture under a long-standing supply program, which is not included in the $628 million maintenance budget. In addition, $100 million has been allocated for termite treatment, with 102 schools to benefit in the first phase.
Let me tell Jamaica, that work has begun. Our principals can testify to that. We have got feedback from them who have been impressed. And of course, there are others who have said, I think more needs to be done, and we are looking at that. So we are responding.
Still on education, the Permanent Secretary has revealed that starting this academic year, every child identified for additional learning support at the early childhood level will be screened. She explained that previously, due to resource limitations, only some students received further testing after the age 4 assessment. But this year, the ministry is changing that approach, and Dr Andrew Holness confirms that if needed, psychoeducational assessments will be provided free of charge.
All those students who have been flagged, this year for the first time, they will be screened. And not only that, once they're screened, and there is recommendation for tertiary screening where we need now a psychoeducational assessment, we won't be leaving that to the parents this year, Jamaica. The Ministry of Education will underwrite that cost.
The ministry is partnering with the University of the West Indies to conduct the advanced screenings for early detection of learning challenges or giftedness. Dr. Troop further explains that the process will include consultations with parents and teachers, followed by written reports outlining tailored strategies to support each child. Screening data will be used to create student profiles and connect them to targeted learning pathways. In other news, 70 titles were issued on Monday to residents of Norwood St. James as the government continues to formalize land ownership and promote security of tenure. Speaking at the handover ceremony, Prime Minister Dr Andrew Holness described the distribution as a turning point for Norwood.
Your community is a case study of a community that is transitioning from informality to formality. You are the epitome of ambition, hard work, and the drive to uplift yourself.
The process was facilitated through the government's systematic registration of title and has been successful in St. Elizabeth and St. Catherine. Dr. Holness says over 12,500 titles have been issued since April 2021, and the aim is to replicate the process island-wide very soon.
What we have done is to be clear and eerie for systematic titling. And we pay for a land surveyor to go into that area, and they do all the surveys, and we put in place an adjudication committee who can draw very easily on the history of the community to make a determination as to where the boundaries fall.
The Buff Bay Market in Portland is now officially opened following a $55 million investment. The space is now a modern facility that offers expanded opportunities for commerce in the town. The market includes 48 stalls for fruits and vegetables, 5 modern butcher stalls, 6 shops for haberdashery, a new sanitary block, and a 2,000-gallon water harvesting system for cleaning and maintenance purposes. At the opening on Friday, local government Minister Desmond McKenzie said the new design would serve as a template for markets across the island.
We are going to be installing cameras in the market as a part of the security feature of the market. Also, we are going to be looking to use energy saving mechanisms as a means of reducing the price of electricity.
Member of Parliament for Western Portland, Darrell Vaz, welcomed the opening as a major milestone for the area.
This reopening today is an encouragement to restart discussions with the Fishery Division of the Ministry of Agriculture to also upgrade the fish shop across the road to integrate both.
And finally, the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, JCPD, recorded a 26.67% reduction in the number of discrimination complaints it received in 2024. The comparison shows 22 complaints received and processed for the period, down from 30 in 2023. Of the 22 reports received, 5 were investigated and 2 were referred to the Disabilities Rights Tribunal. The information is contained in the Economic and Social Survey Jamaica ESSJ 2024, an annual publication of the Planning Institute of Jamaica PIOJ. Also in support of the implementation of the Disabilities Act, the JCPD collaborated with key stakeholders to review and develop codes of practice on education and training and employment. According to the survey, the Council established a Rehabilitation, Transition and Social Services Task Force to conduct a comprehensive review of rehabilitation services and make recommendations for improvements. The document also reveals that efforts were made to increase public engagement and awareness on disability rights. As of December, 14,627 persons with disabilities are registered with the JCPD. This represents 36.3% of the 40,345 applicants. Of the total registrants, 37% have a physical disability, which is the largest recorded disability category in Jamaica. The second largest category was intellectual disability, which accounted for 18% of registrants. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Lisa Rowe. Thanks for watching.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
I appeal to the young man and the young woman on the corner who is wanting a job but don't know where a job is, or may have gone for a job interview and was not successful, and then leaves with the opinion that there is no space for me in this growing economy. I need you. Your country needs you. Your economy needs you. The Caymanas Special Economic Zone needs you. You are a critical element in the growth of this country. And this administration, through the Heart Trust NSTA, we will find you, we will support you, we will assist you in getting trained and getting employed so that you can claim your share in the prosperity that Jamaica is experiencing.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
A strong economy is built on the pillars of sustained growth, low unemployment, stable prices, and a resilient currency. Up next, we recap the Prime Minister's 2025 budget presentation, outlining the government's plans to strengthen Jamaica's economy and secure a better future for all.
Let us examine the facts. Let's start with inflation. The table now being displayed shows that the average annual inflation under my administration has been 5.5%, the lowest under any administration since 1972. This is within the inflation target of 4 to 6%, despite the effect of global inflation resulting from the post-COVID supply chain shocks and geopolitical conflicts. Without the post-COVID inflation spike, we could safely project that our average inflation rate would have trended around 4.3%. Our current annual rate of inflation is now down to 4.4%, at the lower end of the Bank of Jamaica's target range of 4 to 6%. Through well-managed fiscal and monetary policy, we have brought inflation back down to sustainable level. My administration has instituted a robust policy of inflation targeting through disciplined monetary policy of the independent central bank, supported by responsible fiscal policies of the central government. Let's look at job creation. The unemployment rate is a historic low of 3.5%, almost full employment. In 2016, the youth unemployment rate was an alarming 32%. Now it is down to 11%. Since 2016, we have created 253,000 new jobs. That's an average of 28,000 new jobs per year. These are not just statistics. They represent real jobs impacting people, families, and communities. Young people who were once left out of economic opportunities, they now see the door of opportunity opening. Mothers and fathers who struggle to make ends meet are now securing stable employment. Let's now look at the exchange rate. The table now being displayed shows that during the past 9 years, the Jamaican dollar has depreciated by an average of 2.9% per year relative to the US dollar. This is by far the lowest rate of currency depreciation under any political administration since independence. Jamaica today has the most robust and transparent foreign exchange market in the region and the most stable FX environment since our independence. This stability did not happen by chance. It is the product of sound fiscal and monetary policies, increased investor confidence, and a growing economy that is attracting capital rather than creating capital flight. An important factor in achieving sustained currency stability is the country's balance of payment. The balance of payment is like the country's current account. It's our income statement with the rest of the world. It tracks the money flowing in and out of the country from trade, services, and remittances. The graph now being displayed shows the quarterly current account balances since 2012. It shows that we have recorded a surplus for 7 of the last 8 quarters under this administration. So we are well on track to achieve our 3rd consecutive year of a surplus in the current fiscal year. Our net international reserves now stand at a record high of $5.5 billion, representing 29 weeks of goods and service imports. This provides Jamaica with a crucial buffer against external shocks. In the past, we lived in fear of global financial crises, natural disasters, or commodity price swings that could send our economy into turmoil. Today, we stand prepared and protected with reserves that give us the confidence and security to navigate the uncertainties of the global economy. Perhaps one of the most remarkable indicators of our economic transformation is our debt-to-GDP ratio, which has fallen from unprecedented levels. When my administration took office, the debt-to-GDP ratio was over 120%. It is now approximately 68.7%, and we are on track to meet our target of 60% by March 2028. My administration has paid dividends to the people of Jamaica through tax reductions and givebacks. The budget that we have presented represents the 8th consecutive budget of no new taxes and the 10th consecutive budget of no net new taxes. We have done much more than not introduce new taxes. We have reduced taxes more than in any other period since independence. That is a fact. We have increased the income tax threshold. It is now $1.7 million and will move to $1.8 million and then to $2 million over the next 2 budgets. We reduced GCT from 16.5% to 15%, and we are reducing GCT on residential electricity by more than 50%. We reduced transfer tax on property from 5% to 2% and reduced the ad valorem stamp duty with a flat rate and replaced it with a flat rate of $5,000 per document. We increased the pension relief and age relief from $80,000 to $250,000 each, and we plan to increase this in the next budget to $350,000. We increased the turnover threshold required for registration to pay general consumption tax from $3 million to $10 million, and now we are increasing it further to $15 million. More relief for small business. We also increased the de minimis value for imported goods for custom purposes from $50 to $100, and the duty-free allowance for inbound passengers from $500 to $1,000. We reduced estate taxes, reduced the asset tax on financial institutions, abolished the asset tax on non-financial institutions, and abolished the minimum business tax. The achievements are not just incremental improvements, they are historic breakthroughs that have placed our beloved nation in the strongest economic position ever since gaining independence.
Agriculture forms the backbone of food security and long-term sustainability in any country. Let's take a closer look at a new era of agriculture and the key areas set for development.
As part of its ongoing push to transform the sector, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining is fighting threats, fueling growth, and planting the seeds of a resilient future. From yam rust to fruit flies, pests and diseases have long plagued Jamaican farms, but the state is fighting back.
We've put in place a yam rust disease management program, dispatch RAD, R&D, plant quarantine. We put $32 million, Madam Speaker, to areas in Trelawney, Clarendon, Manchester and St. Anne, and we're seeing positive returns. This year, we're going to enhance that with an additional sum of $35 million.
$40 million has been injected into smart fruit fly traps equipped with real-time monitoring technology. The ministry will also establish pest-free agricultural zones for crops, beginning with sweet potato and pepper.
We're also working with the International Atomic Energy Agency to bring in the sterile insect technique to treat with our fruit flies once and for all.
And there's more.
We are going to be launching a new screwworm eradication program for sterile flies to counter the spread of screwworm in the country.
There are other efforts to boost crop resilience and export potential. A seed and nursery certification unit is next on the agenda. This is to ensure healthier crops start in agriculture. At Bodles, a national gene bank is being built to preserve Jamaica's native seed varieties. In aquaculture, the ministry is developing locally produced fish feed supported by new labs, pulverizers, and fisher training.
We've started research. We've brought in an extruder and a pulverizer. We're training some fishers in mill operations to see if we can design our own locally made fish feed.
On the financing front, the Development Bank of Jamaica, DBJ, has rolled out a $2 billion loan fund for small and medium-sized agribusinesses.
Additionally, we've signed an MOU between the DBJ, RADA, and the Jamaica Agricultural Society, where we are preparing our farmers to access these loans. It's a loan-ready training program where we're targeting 450 agricultural stakeholders. Additionally, we have the credit enhancement facility, $30 million for farmers. They can get up to $30 million without traditional collateral.
Other funding flows include a $43 million cluster project in Mandeville, new French agriculture credit line, and over $1 billion unlocked for poultry farmers. This year, 5,000 farmers will be supported under the GK Insurance Weather Protected Scheme. Looking ahead, the ministry is also designing a national pension scheme for farmers, a move expected to provide long-term security for thousands of agricultural workers. Jamaica is preparing to tap into global markets with a new national organic agriculture policy. Updated fisheries regulations will allow year-round sale of legally harvested lobster.
We're looking to drive exports.
And to make Jamaica's produce more competitive abroad, a bold export incentive program is underway that will support everyone from small farmers to large exporters, with waivers on phytosanitary certification fees, making it easier and cheaper to access international markets.
We stand on the dawn of a new era for agriculture, fisheries, and mining.
Up next, a feature that explores climate-smart agriculture. These are innovative farming practices that boost productivity while building resilience to climate change.
Choosing the freshest produce at the market is something that we all do as Jamaicans, especially when we want to whip up a mouth-watering pot of food. Incorporating climate-smart agricultural practices is one way to ensure that there is no disruption in our food quality, availability, and accessibility. But what exactly is climate-smart agriculture? It is simply farming practices designed to improve the resilience and the productivity of land affected by climate change. After a trip to get the freshest vegetables, I set aside time on another day to witness examples of Jamaicans employing climate-smart agricultural practices that should boost farm productivity and efficiency while lowering environmental impact. Here's what I've learned. 22-year-old Javian Bassier, who finished third in a competition for agricultural smart technology, has developed smart irrigation technology that he uses on his own farm in Clarendon.
I've made an irrigation system that is fully automated and you can stay at home on your Android phone and operate it. So it chip in the water because you have sensor in the field, so it will chip in and chip out water when it's needed. A system like this will get 15% more yield, less in labor costs. A system like this now is a very good system to have because it labor costs, so you don't spend as much money for labor, and then your plant get adequate water when needed and when not needed to turn off.
At the College of Agriculture, Science and Education case, they are pairing aquaculture and hydroponics to get double the bang for the buck.
We are demonstrating the aquaponics system. Aquaponics itself is an integration of hydroponics and aquaculture. Now, just to tell you how it works, now the fish will get food. When the fish get the food, they produce waste. This waste is usually rich in nitrogen, and therefore this is going to be converted by bacteria, and the plants will use this as food. So what we do is that we're getting two sources of food while we're only offering food to one.
Agriculture uses about 70% of the world's supply of fresh water, and aquaponics help to reduce that, while also allowing for growing foods on less land acreage.
Based on modern day technology, we are basically introducing smart agriculture practice. And this is a way in which we can conserve, especially on water. In an aquaponic system, we are using 90% less water to grow a crop than we would use in regular outfield. And we are also harvesting crop much earlier. In addition, we increase the stocking density over the different areas. So we basically are getting better yield, faster time, and we're using less water, so it's more efficient. We just want you to understand that there are three organisms that work in order to get the miracle of this system. The fish, the bacteria that are going to convert in the waste from the fish, and the plant, which is the vegetable, which is going to produce food for us. So it is a system that you can adopt for urban area or for commercial system, and it works just magical for all operators.
Can we get any more creative than this? Yes, we can. Youth farmer and student Denicia Garden demonstrates how anyone can use vermicomposting to be environmentally responsible.
So this is something simple. You can start this by using simple things, everyday materials that you have within your backyard or within your household. So you can just use your regular waste. We're showcasing the vermicomposting, and that is done with the use of the California red worms. So these are earthworms that we use to break down organic waste into nutrient-rich solutions. For our vermicomposting that we have here, you'll see that we just use feces from our farm, from our small ruminants farm, and we use waste grass. So that's all we use. So this is something that we're supposed to think about doing because it is environmentally sustainable and eco-friendly. So it doesn't affect the environment in a negative way, and it decreases the greenhouse gas emissions within the air. So it is very eco-friendly.
Climate-smart agricultural practices boost farmers' livelihoods and open new economic avenues for them and the country. Being inventive and applying these practices not only enhance climate resilience and reduce pollution and other environmental hazards, but also increase productivity.
We're at the end of today's show, but be sure to join us again tomorrow for another lineup geared towards providing you with information on the government's policies and initiatives for building a better Jamaica. You may visit our website jis.gov.jm to rewatch this show or to catch up on the others we have on the site. I'm Jabertha Atkinson telling you thanks for watching from our production team here at the JIS.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.